Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to begin very shortly here, but I want to introduce you to Brother Habeeb Quadri. Brother Habeeb, I think many of you do know him, but I will go through the formal bio to fill you in just in case. He is an educator, author, and youth activist. He was recognized in Washington, D.C. with the National Distinguished Principal Award from the National Association of Elementary School Principals. He has a bachelor in teaching of history and a master's in school administration, and he works with Harvard University Graduate School of Education Principal Center. In addition to his teaching and administrative experience in public and private schools, Habeeb has delivered hundreds of lectures throughout the United States, Canada, and abroad on Islam, society, and social problems confronting Muslim youth and the community at large. He generously shares his expertise, also via his own educational consulting company called High Quality Education Consulting. Mr. Quadri has conducted workshops for the U.S. Department of State, and he has partnered up with ICRA Foundation to initiate the first National Islamic Studies Standardized Test and National Islamic Studies benchmarks. Additionally, he has authored and published several books as he continues his mission to help Muslim youth. And so this guy is so connected. He was the perfect choice for us to ask if he would join us in building communities and communication. And so thank you so much for joining us, Brother Habeeb. And Assalamu alaikum, everybody. We appreciate you being on time.
Wa alaikum salam. Well, Jazakallah khair. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulil Kareem. First and foremost, I want to thank you guys for coming in on a Saturday morning when you were like, this is the only day I could maybe get some extra sleep and hang out with my family, but you said no. The dedication to the school, which is awesome. And a lot of times, the staff, the parents, the teachers don't get to see all the other things you do just to make things happen at the school. And I think it's so important that, you guys, that leadership is within, from within, right? It's just from you guys who just go ahead and do what you have to do. And you're trying to build on some skills and tools right now. And one of these tools and skills, it's so important that it starts with you. So any topic, I always believe, I'm a big believer, it has to come within you. Like, okay, if this is important, because sometimes you could just be like, I'm just doing this before I just have to do it. There's a PD. Then it just becomes another form of informational session, but that informational session might not become realization or something that's practical. And hopefully I'm going to try to make things practical. All right. So the first thing I want to kind of start off with, and there's going to be, because it's a small group, we could do some Q&A, is why I bring this up. And I've used this slide on very just different slides or quotes, but it's a point that I always try to make is there's a very little difference in people, right? That little difference makes a big difference. That little difference is attitude. The big difference is whether it is positive or negative, right? And that question, if it's positive or negative, right? We're all going to have feelings. We're going to have emotions, but is it positive, negative? Now, if the topic, as Mrs. Labadi had brought up, Sue had brought up, was this idea of communication, better communication stakeholders, why would you say, why would you think, can I do cold calls here? Or am I supposed to, like, why do you think this is going to be important? Like, why would you think attitude would be so important in communication? Where would the link be? Where can that connection be? We could do it two ways here. One, you could just put on the chat, or we could just kind of, I'm thinking there's a few people, we could just verbally kind of have that conversation right now. So why would you think? Anyone, or do I need to call? Let me see who the first name I see here. Oh, they don't have the names here, so I can't see. Okay, I don't know who's. So, anyone would like to join and kind of say, why do you think this idea of attitude is so important in the idea of communication in that link?
Because your attitude is contagious.
Contagious, right? Okay, it's contagious, and then sometimes that contagiousness, how can that become problematic if it's not always positive? Can that trickle down to, let's see, yeah, if you guys, you guys.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm sorry, I lost my voice.
Oh, no problem.
But without a positive attitude, you are not going to be able to deliver the message or achieve your goal.
Got it. Okay, so hey, if you don't have that positive attitude, you might it can be, it's contagious, right? But also if you don't have that positive attitude, you might not have people really listening to you, right? There might be there, or once or twice they might say, hey, you know what, you have to be serious. But if there is this attitude, I was like, man, he always has something always to say. There's always everything that comes out is that negative Nancy. They even have those, right? It's the 7 kinds of coworkers, and that becomes a big thing. And especially when on top is that the only time they speak to us is when there is a problem, right? And those become conversation and become a problem. And anyone else?
I just want to say that you will never be able to reach out to anybody's heart. That's one thing.
Yes. Now you kind of have one becomes information that we have to disseminate. But what you just brought up is such a big key, is that if you really want to inspire them and connect with them, then it's only using positive positive way of getting that across is so important. And that comes back to our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Mostly anyone he spoke to, they people felt like, man, I'm maybe his most special person. So that means even in communication, it wasn't just the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but even how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam conveyed the words of Allah through his action, that also made a big difference. And that's why it's going to be so important to keep that in mind, right? And in the same way, there's this one quote that some of you guys might have seen. I've come to a frightening let me see here. Okay. I've come to a frightening conclusion. I am the decisive element in the classroom. It is my personal approach that creates the climate. It is my daily mood that makes the weather. We're administrators. So it might be, I have come to a frightening conclusion. I'm the decisive element in the building, right? And it is my personal approach that creates the climate. It is my daily mood that makes the weather. The weather. I'm going to go into the next slide here. As a school leader, I possess tremendous power to make a child's life miserable or joyous, right? So you could have that child's life. You're now upset a child. What would it be? It could be a child, and it could be the administration, where they're like, I don't know if I want to be here. Because I go to a lot of schools, and one of the biggest problems we have at schools, and it's not even the academia aspect of it, it is it's the relationship, communication between board with principal, principal with board, principal with teachers, teachers with principal, principal with parents, parents with that. Every single time I've seen so many schools, every 2-3 years, another principal coming. Even at the school I was at, there's 7 principals in the first 14 years. I remember one of the principals before not the one that right before me, but there was one who came a few before the last principal that when I took over. And I remember she came up because I was trying to kind of get a background, like, okay, what do you think? And she was like, good luck. I'll see if you could last her a year or two. I said, all right, we'll make a challenge, right? And then that way you see how, like, hey, it's no doubt about it that we're going to have problems. But the sunnah of Allah was that things didn't come easy. It came very Allah has made every prophet go through challenges, and the challenges were not just like hey, I'm not able to memorize the words of your God. No, it was more about dealing with the people, right? So that becomes important. So you could be a tool of torture, an instrument of inspiration. You could humiliate, you could or humor, hurt or hero. In all situations, it is my response that's decided whether a crisis will be escalated or de-escalated, or a child humanized and dehumanized. So when you take the word humiliate or humor, hurt, heal, escalate, de-escalate, child humanize, dehumanize, it goes back to what topic that we're just talking about. The first way that we get to know people, if I said right now, if you're going to first find out about someone, you go into a school, you're observing, what are 2-3 things that we look at? How do we kind of put things together about somebody? It's like, hey, I want your opinion on someone. As your administrator, if someone tells you about a kid, what would you do? What's the first thing we go and do? Aisha, can I call on people like that? Aisha Jalani? Sorry, I like to have discussion.
Assalamualaikum. Walaikum.
Walaikum salam.
I would usually observe
Okay, great. And when you observe, what would you be looking for?
um, the environment,
Nice.
you know, specific things that would maybe trigger,
Yeah.
you know, the student.
Excellent, excellent. Asma, what else with that? So she got had that. You know, you look at the environment, look at what are triggers. What would be another thing that you think that could be that comes into play?
Well, for me, the first thing I look at is the attitude of the student. Does he want to be there? Does he not want to be there? What are the elements that are making him or her behave a certain way? If we're talking about the student, if we're talking about the teacher, it's a lot more deeper. But it's always looking at attitude, in my opinion, because that drives a lot of the behavior that you see. I'm from a middle school, high school, so attitude is a really big issue, and that does drive what students do and how teachers deal with them. So that's what I'm looking for, and then the environment that promotes or helps drive that attitude.
Nice. Yeah. And this is very important, because when we go ahead and look at that, so the attitude plays, and the way we'll know from a teacher's perspective is what comes out of the person's mouth. One could be body language, no doubt about it, form of communication, but what that dialogue happens, right? Even though there's a person by the name Richard Elmore. Richard Elmore, he used to be a professor at Harvard University in Michigan, and he wrote a book called Instructional Rounds. And he said, how do we know that, you know, in instructional rounds, it's a very important thing. It's to see what, you know, it has a triangle, okay, teacher, content, and student, and said, look, it's very simple, but what are the conversations that they have? That's why he talks about instructional rounds, that when the doctor comes to a patient in the morning, Allah protect us from being, you know, in the hospital, but if anyone been there or visited someone, sometimes at 7 o'clock in the morning or early in the morning, doctor comes with a few other people, and they stay only for 5 minutes, but they ask specific questions. And that communication that they have with that person and what they gain, they, in the right questions, they have a good idea of exactly what could be the potential, and sometimes go back, you know, they go outside, the residents, they all talk together, then they come back one more time, and then they kind of make a thought, they say something, or they move on and write something in their notes. So he realized it's so important that as to looking at what is that dialogue and communication and how that persona, even doctors who come with positive attitude, or at least with the cheer, show that patients play a big part. And patients who come with better attitude, like when I was going through my cancer treatment, they say one of the biggest things is that it's the mindset. If you could come with a positive mindset, the research have said that without using faith, right? You know, they're not going to tell faith, but it's so true, because when you're getting your chemo, there's small rooms, some are just by curtains. I remember one guy just cussing up a storm, like, I can't believe this, because his family member was there, and how can this happen? So you realize how much this is important, and how it's communicated in their family trying to change his mindset plays a big part. Now, why I'm kind of bringing this up, and then this whole communication, and I'm going to put some things, so we're going to have some tips on certain things to keep in mind, is that research talks about this, right? Gary Phillips, the Center of Improving School Culture, talks about positive learning can only take place in a positive culture. A healthy school culture affects more student and teacher success than any other reform or school improvement of currently being employed. Because now people want to be there. Research shows that people don't come to school because they want to make sure that money's not always a driving factor. No doubt about it. It helps. But people realize, especially when people come to Islamic schools, I realize they have another connection. Why? Right? There's always going to be one or two who are just doing this as a stepping stone, no doubt about it, which is fine. Alhamdulillah, there's nothing wrong with it. As long as you're doing what you have to do, you got to take care of your family. You got to take what you need, what's best. But people really, at the end, kind of be like, that is something that's important. That I will and want to get there. And if they feel like they appreciate it, it can go there. And so why is this things I'm going to talk to leadership is because you can't lead where you want to go. You know, leaders must be perpetual leaders to bring about other change in others, right? And that idea of constantly looking at and trying to think of things play a big part. And why is
Habeeb, excuse me for interrupting, but I'm just dying to ask you, so I'm going to take advantage of this small group to do this. You know, a leader's position is not without turbulence. And it can be very exhausting. So, I mean, really, truly draining. But what is your own self-talk? You have consistently been very positive, very energetic. And I know that obviously you face turbulences like any school leader does, but what do you tell yourself to get yourself going?
Yeah, so I'm going to be kind of talking. I just wanted to get one or two things, and I was going to give you guys my here's what we have to kind of go ahead and do. But I'm going to give you guys a tip on this. So if you take this culture, and I want you guys to realize how as an admin what we have to do, right? Climate and culture, right? And so it's Mondays versus Fridays, right? Becomes a thing. Everyone who has those. The culture, and this is where you have to say, how as administrator, do we gives Monday permission to be miserable? Right? Where we kind of like, oh, it's Friday. You know what? They're going to be relaxed. But if you make that a habit, then almost that one whole day is becoming unproductive on Sunday. So for me as an individual, you have to realize even on the weekend, if Monday's the day, what am I going to do to make sure that day's more hyped than any other day? So Friday, if that's morning assembly, I'm going to make this a fun day. Or Monday, I need to make sure that I am there. So now people might say, what are those specific things that when you want to become a leader? I'm a big, just as a side note, one is before we go to talk about communication, if you're important, we as within, you have to take care of yourself. I'm a big believer, I don't drink coffee, I don't drink tea. Now I'm saying people have to, but for me, exercise plays a big part. Like I have to move around, right? Because if you can have that, even when I went through cancer, one of the things that helped me with this aggressive chemo was that I was somewhat in decent shape, right? And that plays a thing. So even making sure on those things that what triggers you. Is Monday those days you get tired? Then does that mean you have to sleep earlier? You have to start realizing yourself on what can we do? And the second thing is that I realize that when we have that, what's our purpose? What is our why? What is our why? Why do you want to do why you, in specific? If I give you an example, I can't get off the slide here, but I'm gonna share you. Remind me to share my why to you guys at the end. I just did this whole presentation on what's your why to our staff this year. That was our question. What is your why? And I think when you start realizing why you do certain things, that plays a big part. So and keeping that in mind. So why is I'm bringing this climate culture? Because climate can change back and forth. You could have one bad day. But when it becomes part of the norm, attitude or mood of the group is the climate. But then the culture becomes the personality of the group. And why I'm trying to just kind of giving a few minutes just to kind of really focus on this, because when we do communication, you are the one that can help change the climate. Because this communication is not just like, I got a problem. I believe that if you have strong communication to how you change the culture, then when you do have problems at school, it's not going to be a problem. Right? It's not going to be an issue. Now, I want you guys right now, everyone to think to yourself about climate and culture. Now, hopefully this is safe space, right? Because it's not like everyone in the same school. So I'm hopefully thinking, and maybe we won't have to post, this video to everyone. We'll just have that. But if we had to kind of have a safe space right now, I'm going to give you 4 or 5, and I need you to think right now, what is that issue that maybe is a climate that by now slowly has maybe become a culture, which is maybe not the best. If you don't want to use your own school, you could maybe think of someone else that you may be thinking of, right? Where in climate, there's flexibility, easy to change, but in culture, it takes many years to change and saying, it's not going to happen. Like when I first came to school, it's not going to happen. If 6 teacher principals couldn't do it, what do you think was going to happen? You know what? The Arabs will never change. If the Prophet said, there's no possible way. They're just the way they are. But the Prophet said, the Quraysh will, no, they will, you know what? Allah's divine inspiration, you have to give. Even Prophet Ayub, Prophet Yunus alayhi salam, left before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted him to leave, right? And that was something that he had a consequence for. So what you realize that's so important. So when it says feel it when you come into the door and members cannot feel it, it is all around us, is part of us, right? First step to improvement determines if improvement is possible. Those are things. So right now, can someone share what's something that you maybe in the past, right? Because I don't want you to feel like, okay, man, I'm talking about in a school here. What is something that you realize that you've seen at another school where that you walked in and said, hey, it wasn't climate, it became culture, which one could be good or one could be bad. So you could pick whichever one you'll like. What could be one of those? Anyone? Feeling uncomfortable? Oh, that means I'm gonna have to start calling people here. And let me see if I can. I'm trying to. When you have a picture, why can't I see your name? There's a person with the white hijab. I'm trying to see if I can get their name here. All right, I don't want you to feel also personally if it's about school, it maybe becomes a big thing. So, but here's my last thing, and now I want to go into communication. It's much easier to change an organization's attitude than it is to change its personality. And that's why I think every year, what are things you guys are going to be doing for better communication? So, for example, do you have, if in your class, here's, I want you to think about, in the start of the school year, one of the things that we do that is very important is everyone, and every other few years, because sometimes we have the same class, is if you have everyone comes up, right? We all know there's going to be drama. So if you ask teachers and say, if you would like to, if there is something that we have to give you advice, how would you like us to do that? What would be the right way? Sometimes we don't ask those questions. We just be like, okay, we have that, because sometimes we might do it the way that we think it's best. And when you ask individuals, what do you think is the best way for you to, how would you like us to give you advice and to see how, what would that be? Right. So right now, if I had to say to, the brother, okay, well, you lost your voice, but can you tell me how, if I had to ask you, how would be the best way to give you nasiha, what would you say? I'm sorry, because I think I have the slides. I can't see their names. So I just see the picture. So.
Brother Habeeb, so I'm sorry, what was the question exactly?
Like if we had to give you advice, if I had, like, one of the things in communication we always say is that if in the start of the year, if I go to every teacher and say, hey, if we had to give you advice in a situation that happens throughout the school year, how would I give that nasiha to you? And if I had to ask you that question, how would you want to give you advice if something went wrong at school?
I think I experienced last year a big challenge, which is changing the culture of the school, because I put a goal that I want everyone to walk into my school knowing that the attitude, the behaviors, the communication has to be in a certain way. So I put it as a goal, and I don't know how to achieve it. So I attend Harvard classes just to how to change school culture, and it's a big challenge. I'm still working on it.
Okay, so, I see. So the thing I'm trying to get at is that I want you guys to realize, knowing that we have that, one of the things I need you guys as a school principals to do is have that question to the teachers. This is one of the things in communication, is to ask them how they would like to be communicated to when there is a problem, when there's advice, or we have to evaluate them. And that will help us figure out how to change that culture, because now you'll know each person's there, right? That would be like one thing kind of to do. So I was trying to give you an example and say, if I had to give you advice, how would you like that to happen?
If you want.
Yeah.
So for me, I think I asked that to my teachers, and a lot of them said directly, come talk to me. Don't send me an email. Definitely not something over the weekend. Just come and talk and tell me what happened, or what are you hearing, or what you want me to change. And I think in general, humans like that. Just be straightforward. I haven't yet met someone who said, please send me an email or a memo or a text about it, and then we'll talk about it, later. So I think direct communication and candid communication is typically what people like, and that is what I would want as well as a leader.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Nice.
And
So
that is the way the board is with me too. I mean, in my relationship with the board, they're very direct, but they're very firm and respectful. But I also, I also think being solution oriented is important, not just criticism.
Yeah. And that's a good point. And so that was that first question, right? But you know how a lot of times, even though we're direct, still things happen. People always say, yeah, just tell me. They just say that. Second question, it's so important that you have to ask, because sometimes we just say, like, I said this is what it is. When you are mad, how would you like us to speak to you? How much time do you need? And so, because what happens is sometimes we ask that first question, right? So that's one part, right? And say, if we would like to give you some advice, how would you like? Oh, just be direct. But at the second question, I'll always say is that if it's something that's going to be controversial, or we realize you are mad because you find out that these two teachers are getting mad at each other, and you're like, hey, what are you doing? Right there, they say, well, I thought you told us to be direct. You often ask and say, if this is something that where we have realized that you are very emotional, how would you like us to speak to you? I have an example. One teacher said, give me 24 hours and please don't speak to me right at that moment. See, even though they say direct, but there's the emotional aspect. I'm trying to have that, because sometimes we're like, well, that's what the person said. I just told her like it is. That's what they said. So it's so important to keep on making sure, also looking at what their social emotional state and say, hey, I know you told us when you give us advice is there, but when you are having emotional or is something at that time you're emotional or you're angry, what would you like us to do? That's number two. Number three, I wanted to make sure is to keep in mind is that what is something that that is a pet peeve of yours? Now you might be asking, why am I asking that? What is one of the reasons that is one of your pet peeves? Why do you think I'm asking that question?
Because sometimes I think we underestimate that. I mean, if it's a pet peeve of a teacher that a student, for example, speaks out of turn without raising their hand, versus another teacher who's okay so long as the conversation is respectful, then if the issue is your class is loud or something like that, the one with the open attitude isn't going to really mind that criticism, versus the other one, because now you're really telling her something that she thinks or he thinks is totally under control, and you're getting into their sort of uncomfortable space.
Love it. Now, this is, in communication, the way it is to get more information about the person before you start the communication. That's why we're stepping back here. Why is that important? Because if you start finding out people's thing, and someone says, I'm organization, people who are not organized annoys me. If you have an elective teacher and there's a teacher who's very organized, now that person comes into her class, and by the time she leaves, all the desks are sideways, the paper's not there, or she has her bin, but she doesn't take care of it. One time, alhamdulillah, no problem. Number two, oh, mashallah, no problem. Let me help her out. 4, 5, 6 times, and after that, it's like, good Lord, this lady's getting on my case, right? That becomes the situation. If someone's a perfectionist, and now from administration, I have to just deal with this sometimes. If someone's a perfectionist, and now they're just like, well, you didn't send this email at this time. You didn't tell us. You just told us just half an hour, 10 minutes before that the recess is going to be outside. Why couldn't you tell us? It rocks them. People who are very like black and white, if things just don't go that way, it could rock their whole day and frustration. And so that's why you kind of get an idea, because sometimes a leader or another teacher's like, why is she so like complaining about this? But now if you know from starting, it's like, this is her personality. This is what has that. It gives you an idea. Like my wife's an anesthesia peds, right? So she's taking putting IVs in babies where you can't even see the vein, right? They have to do like ultrasound to see where the vein is, or she's putting a trachea inside someone's stomach. I mean in their mouth. There's no room. She's like very organized individual. I had to look at things at the big picture, right? But there's just different styles, right? But you realize Allah's made certain people the same way. So I have to, in the situation, I'm like, okay, I know why. When my kid's like, oh my God, mom, okay, I'm going to do the homework, it'll be done. I'm like, hey, I don't, she'll get it done, right? I like big pictures. As long as you got 2 days to get it done, whereas where mom might have been the person who just came home, got the homework done, then did everything else, right? Task is done. So those certain things kind of play a part. So in communication, asking those specific things, have that. Then the idea to change positive is that if we would like you to thank you, how would you like us to do that? And then sometimes you can even say under $2, right? And why am I bringing this up is that sometimes everyone's different. When I first started, I'd be like, I had a teacher rep also on part of our board that we put onto our school culture and say like, hey, teachers have to have a right to vote. So a teacher vote and we have the vote. And I, as an administrator, we get to vote on our school board, because that was changing the culture. But one of the other things is when I used to be like, hey, great job. So one of my department heads are like, hey, heads up. I had a principal advisory committee from each department, and we would talk. They say, hey, Habeeb, we love your energy, you're trying to think, but some of us, we would really like if you wrote notes. I'm like, It's like, just like a small note. And that goes, I know you're verbal, but, sometimes we need to do that. I'm like, I never thought about, I'm like, hey, good job, or drop an email, but just handwritten notes, right? I'm like, okay, something I need to do. It was a good point because guys were sometimes like, oh, awesome, and I realized half my staff is women. I can't give fist bumps or whatever, So then I realized, okay, small notes have that. The other advice they said is that if you are going to right, if you are communicating something that you disapprove, would you like us to respond now or later? One of the things that they gave me advice and said, hey, Mr. Quadri, I know you might have an answer for it, but sometimes ladies just want to, okay, I'm not trying to, please don't take it like I'm trying to stereotype, but this is what the teacher told me, all right? My department head, a lot of us ladies, sometimes we might just come, they're going to just vent, just listen. Don't even make a response. I'm like, all right, just listen, all right. Next 24 hours later, give you an answer. Some people might want it, and that's why we look at it like, hey, so all right, good, and then sometimes they just be like, look, I just needed someone to vent to. That's it, Mr. Q. I'm like, all right, that's it. I realize I can't just give a solution. I'm like, man, I could give you an answer right now for this, but there are going to be, because I realize everyone works in different ways, and having people who could be like, hey, this is how in your communication, have you really asked some of your ones that are, respected by the other teachers, what do you think of my communication? Where do you think we are lacking? Am I good listening? Am I good in speaking? Is it my body language? You need to show that. Sometimes people are like, okay, you know what? Hey, we could see something in your face, that might happen. If you don't ask those questions, then it's going to be problematic. So if you want better communication, you need to have people like be honest and say, what do you think? Like we do this in everything else. In sports, we have the coach telling us, hey, you didn't do this right. When we go cooking, like, hey, you know what? That didn't taste that salt. You need to put some more of that inside of it. When you do art, if you want to get good at something, or even on a software or an app, that you'll always get tips on how do you make yourself better. But we have a hard time, really. We will go to PDs on this, but do we ever ask and say, what can I do to be better? And someone would just be like, just tell me how good thing of a listener I am, 1 to 10. Did you rank yourself? How good thing when I communicate? Do you think people understand what I'm trying to get at? What about when I'm writing? Oh, you know what? You're writing. What happens is that you're just kind of too blunt, and we don't understand what the whole process is. That you need to reinforce it with something, with a verbal message. Those are questions we have to do. We have to start thinking about those 4, 5, 6 things. If you could even put into your arsenal, will help you become a better communicator, right? Because it will help us kind of go ahead and change to see, the greater good of what they're trying to do. Because one of the things is, if we don't, that becomes problematic. Right? Any questions? I'm just the other quick thing, just to show you on the slide. Now, when you talk about this in communication, these were kind of things. I know I want to go into the bill. I know we got 1 hour, so I want to talk about how this communication goes into the businesses, which I want to talk in the last 15, 20 minutes. But when you look at the 10 essential skills, right? Listening plays a big part, right? And when you have to look at listening. And in listening, here's the thing. If you're in a group setting, or you're in a department meeting, when do you think you should speak? Do you start off the meeting?
For me, I do. I know it's not the best practice, but we have such a small school and small staff and no departments at this point. It's a startup. So I do, but hopefully at some point I will have other leaders in the room that can probably start. But once I started, then there's always a task for everyone to kind of share, which gets me to listen and take notes, and they kind of lead.
Yeah. Great. Anyone? Right?
Well, I try.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, that's right. That's a perfect.
Okay. Well, I try to break the ice first before I start to speak. Ask either throw a joke, or try to ask how was the day, or like make a joke about if it was a tough day. It like I would say, oh, it was a very easy day. Let's just cool it off, and try to ask them some questions before, like make it a 5-minute social time before we start the meeting. And I ask them if there is some specific topic they would like to address and give them a chance, like how much time they would require to address it.
Good. And so, here's the two parts. Sister Asma said too. So, I want you guys to realize if there's a meeting that you have your whole team, no doubt about it, you have to start it off, and maybe there might be some objective. But the catch becomes if there's a question like, "Hey guys, what do you think we could do better at pick up and drop off?" Let everyone go through, then answer. They talked about one of the things that Nelson Mandela. If you ever heard him speak, he wasn't the most like these oratory skills were amazing. No, but they said that one of the things he did was he was a great listener. He would take everyone's thought, then he would go ahead and speak. So I think one of the things that we have to look at is that even in a group setting, if there is a part, one is like information, hey guys, tomorrow's there. But when we want to get thoughts and saying, except one person say, guys, hey, anyone have that? I'm gonna give you a few seconds, and then here's my thoughts, right? That could change the game of kind of listening. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes, so we have department meetings where now we're big enough where the department runs and I come the last 5 minutes, where when I was a principal, even now I sometimes just pop in. But what we also did is every month we meet with all of our teachers, right? So if it means all first grade teachers together, all second grade teachers together, third grade teachers, and we set it up. And then we think about 5 things. How are you doing, you in curriculum, you and students, you and other staff, you in administration, and then how are you as a person? Like, how are you doing? End up with, how's life? How's your kids? How's that? Having those conversations go and play a big part, right? Because the more when you have that, the farther it would go is kind of thinking, what are certain things that you would do? So when you now have that small group and they're talking and you're listening, that changes it. So that way, even that once a month, and if you're a small school, I think it's mandatory to have one-on-one meetings with your teacher, because now, or even if it's not every once a month is not enough, even if it's twice a month, guess what? That means they get to talk to you 4 times, which is not just your teacher evaluation. You can talk about teacher evaluation, but it's not just the only time. And that's why now you might say, well, it doesn't take a lot of time. I'm going to say, if I have 100 people, I have a 78 staff, 100 altogether, because I even moved our custodians, I think you guys can all do it. Because there's time. We just have to block off and say, hey, and you get precise, you can finish in 20, 30 minutes. You block off just that 1 week and say, I'm going to meet all my staff at that. Or I'm just going to do early this month, next week, elementary. But that means if you just block off throughout the day and say, like, I'm going to have 4 meetings or 5 meetings per week, just one per day at this time, that just has that planned out. Everyone just knows that's your time. But what that does is now you get to know everyone. Then you get to know, if you're a small school right now, that you figure out who your leaders are. When I first got into the new school, I met with every teacher who was part of that school in the summer, and I figured out who my 5 principal advisors, who my 3 major players were. At that time, the school was smaller. Figured out who my 3 major. I took someone from the religious studies program, one from the early childhood, elementary, middle school, and figure out who the movers and shakers. And decide if I could buy them and if I could get them on my side, then I got the school. And there's some give and take, but that's how we have to play. So before we talk about all the communication, this is what you have to do. You have to plan how you're going to make that team and communicate in a proper way to get to what we need to do and get the right information about the school. Even when I first got there, like the elementary school, middle school, 8th graders who left the school, I was like, okay, what didn't you like about the school? What do you like about the school? That gave me answers to now figure out what I need to do in middle school so kids don't want to not leave the school. Sorry, sister. It doesn't have with the white scarf. You have a picture with this white scarf on. I don't know why I can't see the name. All right,
Sister Rana, perhaps.
Sister Rana, yes. Go ahead. I think you were saying something.
No, I already did.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Brother Habeeb, I have a question. I have sometimes been in a school as an observer, and I see the students, maybe because there's a sense of like rigidity, that they have no voice. They seem depressed. They don't really feel free to like be themselves. When you pick up on something like that, what is your best advice?
Yeah, so I think this is so important that how you have student council and stuff, even if you don't have student council, even if it's a small school, having just one representative in each class and kind of having a meeting with them at lunch. I'll give you an example. We have uniforms. The kids were like, why can't we have uniforms? So I was like, okay, what can we do? They're like, Friday's a good day. I'm like, you know what? If you go wear your best clothes on Friday, we'll take Fridays off. And how do we start off? We first said, okay, all the fifth graders and fourth graders, because they want to be unique, right? At Skokie, we have a different, we have an elementary campus and a middle school, high school, and the eighth graders. I said, all right. Then it became trickle down to fourth graders. Like, well, what about them? I'm like, all right, once a month, everyone could come off on Fridays. But the other things are for the ideal, like, hey, you're special. The fifth graders, it's your last year, or your eighth graders, your last year. Now we have a senior class. What makes them different? Those conversations, and saying you could give them a small win, they feel like you've been heard. See, they could give you 7 issues, and you could pick even 1 or 2, and they say, hey, like, we want to have this, or we want to have school spirit, this and that. Or can we finally wear jeans? I'm like, well, then it can't be skinny jeans, blah, blah, blah. And this day will be jean day. We'll let you have that. Can that be a win? Can that go against your regular norm? And then kids feel like, hey, certain times, you know what? Well, Mr. Q kind of lets things go, if you have it. So you come proper way, you write it out. I'm going to think about this. And when I think about this, we're going to make an adjustments to it. Hey, and those are conversation pieces that we can do, that I think sometimes we have to kind of let them listen and look at it, and not like it can't be done, and say, well, you know what? Throw that out there and let me see what we could do. Right now, our uniforms haven't come in for about 3 weeks because of this whole thing of one of the companies. Some kids are like, well, can we just go the whole year without uniforms? I'm like, no. But then the parents were like, well, you know what? No, we have to start buying other, just regular clothes, because we didn't have enough uniforms, because we went to this whole new uniform company. So in the discussion, I said, you know what? You can, if the new one's coming, it's not mandatory, because it's already almost a quarter in. You maybe already spent that money. We understand that. And you're like, oh my God, but we have to get the uniforms. I say, like, whoever bought it, by next year, you'll have just 1 year as transition, because the issue's on our side. We can't blame them and say, well, I have that. So now when they listen, say, you know what, they have some good wins. That's when you have evaluations at the end of the year by the parents or teachers and students, and you should have that. So what we do is, after the second quarter, the kids get to evaluate every teacher. Why wait at the end of the year? Year and a half, they could get to communicate. They get to have their on instruction, classroom management, homework, and motivation, 1 to 4, and they could give note. Teachers get to read it. We don't use that against them as evaluation. But what does that do? That gives teachers after 1 quarter, so after the next quarter, where they think they're doing good, where they're lacking. They have all this information in front of them. We don't wait the whole year. And now we could be like, guess what? The kids were saying this. I never thought that's how the kids thought of this, right? And that communication can go a long way to kind of having that information. So when people come there, you have to give wins. And now, yeah.
What were those 4 categories again, please?
So one is instruction, right? Just be like, hey, like instruction, homework, classroom management, and then just motivation. Okay. Just the climate, just kind of keeping it's exciting. Like how do you do? Yes.
I'm sorry, Dan. No, can I go back to you were saying about the meetings and consistency?
Yeah.
I do have a small staff, so I am meeting with them, almost like a 50-minute meeting, but sporadic, meaning, this week I'm meeting with this teacher, next week I'm meeting. So over the course of the, 6 weeks or something, I'm meeting with all the staff individually. And then we have those, collective staff meetings that are twice a month. Can you tell me in your experience, what's the objective of that meeting, of that one-on-one? Because for me, I always have an agenda, at least 1 or 2 items that I need to focus on for this month. For this round, we're talking pacing, for example. Next round, we're talking something else. And then they get to tell me other issues, like anything going on. We start off with saying, hey, what's going on in the classroom? How's everything? If there's something personal, we talk about it. But I feel like, I don't know, is this the right approach? Should it just be like, hey, how's everything going, and not being very direct about objective, no agenda? Should I be giving those notes back to the teacher? Like, here's what we talked about. And I feel like that might be a little too much, where they feel like I'm kind of writing down things, and what if they say something wrong? So I usually keep those notes to myself, and I look back at them and I say, hey, we've agreed, 2 months ago to do this. How's that going? But sort of like for me, not for them to have. So can you tell me just, I'm curious as to what best practices look like in terms of teacher communication and staff management?
Yeah. So when you're meeting, so when we meet once a month, the teachers know there's 5 things we're going to discuss: curriculum, student, parents, other staff, administration, right? Those 5. And sometimes things will go fast. Let's start off like, hey, how's the curriculum? Do you think we're feeling on pace? What's your thoughts? Any lesson that you thought that went really well this quarter? You want to share? Okay, guess what? They let them. Hey, hey, I had the opportunity to get to see your class, and this is what I noticed too. Right, and I had that. Oh, okay, cool. Now, if you're doing a teacher evaluation, you could just follow up the next day. That's a separate thing, right? But what that does is that you can just kind of remind them and say, well, I brought that, I saw that. Hey, then it's like, hey, what about students? Any students that really kind of that kind of pop out? Hey, I'm really still having a tough time with this, so on and so forth. Oh, okay. So what have you done? All right, let me think about that. I can follow up. I can help you out. Hey, let's try to see if we get some support for that. What about parents? Man, this parent's just getting on my case. It's over and over. Oh, you know what? I know that parent. Let me. If you want me to sit down with you in that meeting, that'd be there. Because what you try to do is let them say stuff and say, is there anything I could do to help out? Hey, staff, my aide. Oh, that aide. She's just. She's awesome. But you know what? But she just likes to do copies, but she does not want to work with kids one-on-one. Oh, okay. What can we do? Is she part of the lesson planning? Oh no. If you maybe get a part, then maybe she feels like she's a part. Maybe she'll do it. Oh, I never thought about it that way. Hey, what can I do to help you become a better person, not administration? Well, you know what? I when you do come in, I get nervous a little bit. But yeah, all right, maybe if you can't come maybe on Mondays, I just kind of feel uncomfortable. If you come on Wednesdays, oh, thanks for heads up. That's awesome. I'll keep that in mind. And overall, how you been? Overall. If you just have that and people that say after that thing, they get told they know that these are the 5 questions, they'll be prepared. They'll just get used to you. That's why I'd rather have prepared 5 agenda points. But you just kind of move. And some things, if you realize every time you're just stuck, like I had one staff just this last week, I met with someone. And because that person is so caught up on one specific thing all the time, we don't get to, sometimes I have to skip, and I'll skip one subject, one area, and go into like upset like parents, because they might always go on, and I'll skip that one and make that last. So I could get through everything else. If I really want to kind of know other stuff, because I know sometimes curriculum might be like the whole 40 minutes. So you might flip flop and make curriculum the last one, so you could get through everything else. Those are things that I think it's so important to have some base of what that's going to have that, so they feel like, wow, there's always going to be an opportunity to talk about from administration support, maybe a staff issue, maybe a parent issue, maybe a student issue, or curriculum, which I feel like are the 5 major things of a school that you might at least have to deal with. Hope that helps.
Sister Asma, I took notes last week, or last time we met, that you were feeling some resistance in sharing the vision. I'm not sure if I understood that correctly, but because we are talking about communication, would you like to approach Brother Habeeb specific to that?
Yes, if I may. I think last week or the last session I had this question. So I'm a startup. This is our 4th year. This is in the Sterling area in Virginia, which is sort of like an affluent Muslim community. And we don't have a middle school, high school, Islamic school in the area. We have one that's diplomatic and it's not really Islamic, and that's it. So there was a lot of resistance. And last week we were talking about vision and understanding our vision. And I asked the question, how do I get other stakeholders to share the vision of the school? And I don't mean it from like, what is our vision and how do we come about it? I'm talking about the bigger vision of needing even just an Islamic school, that Islamic school is not, backwards, or that it's not less, rigorous, or that these kids are actually going to go to college and so on. So I know the typical answer that people give me is, wait until you graduate your first class into good colleges, and then people will come to you. But I really want more of the grassroots, like what am I supposed to do outside of that? So I'm a board member, I'm a co-founder. So I do have a lot of say and a lot of pull, and I want to know how to take the project to a place where people now see it as a really important project, and people come and bring their kids. It's not about fundraising. It's not about raising, money. It's needing more students and wanting more people to believe in the concept of the Islamic school.
So are you elementary school and now you just started the high school? Is that what it is?
No, we don't have elementary at all. We have other schools in the area that had elementary. Many parents for the last. High school. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We're just a middle school, high school, 6th grade through 12th grade.
Oh, that's tougher. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, so 2-3 things happen, right? And just in general, first and foremost, we always say, feasibility studies and looking at it and say, hey, even is there a niche of students who are even interested in that. That becomes one, but what we already know you already established this. So we'll take that away because that kind of gives us data. I'll give you an example. The school I was at, which I'm still at, when I first started, it was like 185 kids, right? And there are like 4 kids were graduating. We got to start at high school. I'm like, no. I'm like, we're $300,000 in deficit. The budget went from 250 to 180. There's a lot of stuff going on. So we decided to say, hey, how do we go ahead and build a school? It took us 17 years to start the high school because I was like, I want to make that elementary solid, and move up. And then say even middle school, we didn't even take new kids. I said, let's take every new kid that we have from early childhood and make those our kids, right? Because we're going to develop them. And that our biggest marketing would have been kids. Mashallah, we're at 750 kids just this year. Now the high school aspect, same thing. Then we started 3 or 4 years ago, a high school, and the board said, hey, I was like, all right. And we started small, right? We did something unique. We tried to do a dual credit because our relationship with our public school is very solid. We have 400, 300 kids in every high school, public school here, which are Muslim. We have Jummah prayers there. They have halal. There's just so many other options. Now the question became, we had only 7 kids, our senior class thing. But in 2-3 years, our freshman class, we have a waiting list. We could only take 25 kids, and there's there. So that problem is that people are not going to jump in until they see if the product is solid enough. So there is going to be that thing, because you could convince all you want, and they're going to say, hey, if for that convincing would have been that in the starting of saying, did you even have feasibility that people really want a high school here? Right. Or if it was a 4 or 5 people, because sometimes people have it because, hey, I want to do it because some of my friends want to. Then you'll say, hey, no problem. Develop it enough. And then we go through it. Like right now, this year, we're starting an online academy. We have an online, and we have about 13, 14 kids who just come to our school through online. It's small, but now my whole thing in 5 years, can it become something big? Is there our HIFIT program started with 4 kids. We did a dual credit 7 years ago. Now a lot of Islam schools do the same thing, academics and thing. Now we've graduated more than 50. So there is that time of that process to prove that this is the right thing. That is true. It's not hard to sell, especially in middle school, high school, because now they're thinking it's college. Like, okay, look, you know what? If my kids first preschool, pre-K, kindergarten, like, okay, people used to leave after 1st, 2nd grade. Like, okay, even if they have that, there's enough time. Then people stayed until 5th. Now we got our 8th grade. We had 65 8th grade graduate class. So we realized people started saying, hey, you know what? People are saying there's great quality of education. But now what you're going to have to do is, because you already established it, you're going to have to start bragging. In our deen, I know we're supposed to be humble, but you have to, every Friday, Jummah, things you have to say, guess what happened today? ... We did this. We did this. Because we are in an institution, in a community where always people look at the negative to justify why we don't. Islamic school is one of the toughest things, because everyone's always like, I don't know, our kids might be in a cocoon, all this nonsense. I'm like, no, what cocoon? You know, so they don't have to, you know, that they maybe have to be exposed to all this nonsense. Like at the end, there's no doubt about it. We have to get better as educators in schools too. But I think when we kind of show and saying this is what wins, and that Friday and sending out every week, one of the biggest things we do as a school is market. Every week we're sending out like, this is what would happen. This is what's happened. Hey, this person came in. Because if we don't show stuff to people, then that credibility is not there. Right? Even as administrators, sometimes we have to just kind of show like, hey, what has been going on, even to our board and to the community, because what we mostly do is when something goes up, then we're reacting like, well, our kids do this and this. So my whole thing is when people are like, oh, I don't know about your school. Well, if you notice, here's 8 different handouts that we gave out the last year about all the new things. We have a thing called Top 10 every week. Top 10 cool things you need to know about your school every month. It's called the Principal's Top 10. Like, you know, our Mr. Ahmad does it. So at least if you don't read anything, at least these are top 10 things you should know about what we happened, you know, at our school. We had a guest speaker came here. Our girls basketball team won this. We just finished our maps, right? Just like what is there, you know, we had one kid go downstate, and just kind of your top 10, at least it's a quick, you know, people don't read long things, but bullet points, it goes a long way.
So what I'm hearing is that this is typical, and we just need to kind of push through our pretty much what we're doing, what is different, what is unique, you know, just kind of market the school, and just wait for, okay.
Right, like what got us next? See, we had dual credits. The first 2 years, there was not dual credit. Junior year, people heard, and the senior like, oh my God, this kid had 10. We had one girl finish her high school in 3 years, right? Because she just went summer so now parents like, wait a minute. So this freshman year, now because they saw that first junior class get to senior, and they saw how the Oakton works, we had 27 people apply. We only had 23 spots, right? 24, right? That's how our high school, we don't have 2-3 different classrooms. And that's when it started saying, all right, I was like, look, it's going to, we took a bleeding. We took a hit for 2 years of financial, right? I even told the board, it's going to be a financial thing if you want to do this. But we were like, okay, our middle school can financially support our high school. And then inshallah, high school by itself will have. And that's the thing. You're right. Yeah. You went into market, which is the toughest. The financial parts of Islamic schools, middle school, high school is a loss most of the time. So may Allah reward you for taking that. Right. So, but now it's like, how do we go ahead and communicate through people and have that? That's why Fridays, morning, and even communicating for me is like doing parking duty. Like I still do parking duty for the last 22 years because I get to see every parent. I see them, I smile, get to know what's going on. Even as a superintendent, I'm still there because I want them to know like, hey, what's going on? I get to kind of have that, like we have every Friday, and I know we didn't get to the building. Maybe I could come back another time where we do on stakeholders, but every month we do a school night at a restaurant. And then, so we're passing on like, hey guys, don't forget today's there, whatever, or I might be working in the back at the restaurant with them just to be as a server, pre-COVID, right? That kind of changes that whole kind of concept of like, hey, this is what we want to communicate. We're a family, we're this and that. We're building character, developing minds. And when we talk about character, like we have to tell people what we're doing. Like in this month of Rabiul Awwal, we're doing 100 salawat for 1 million hasanat. That's our campaign. Everyone at home, everyone has to read 10 salawat, and I said, please at home, everyone read 10 every day. We have 750 students. This way, this is how much hasanat. It's a buy-in. Even every class in this month, morning assembly do 10. After starting of every class, everyone has to do 5. Every teacher has to buy into it. Changing everyone's concept, like everyone let's buy into stuff, kind of happens and kind of changes that. So I think that's where I'm at. My big thing about communication is that this thing is that not nonverbal communication. Is it clear and concise? All these little things play a big part in understanding, and then understanding our clientele, which might be different than others. We are 46 different countries at our school, mashallah. We're right by the city of Chicago. So it's wide range. You have different views, and we have about 10, 15 kids we take as refugee kids every year, and we have a set aside for some kids from the inner city. And so it's like, how do we make sure that we are empathetic to their issues and so on and so forth? And how do we make those adjustments? But we have to brag in the mashallah in the right proper way. I mean, not about ourselves, but the school.
Right. If I may, just one last follow-up question. What's your take on having to be accredited as an Islamic school? Of course, it's important to us, but as a startup, it's really hard to be, accredited. And this is middle school, high school. And I've seen a lot of other schools that have inspired my own project around the States, Islamic high schools that have been around for 30 some years, are still not accredited, but they've graduated to like really top universities over the years. So it made me feel, more like stronger to be able to do this while I'm still, getting accredited or working on accreditation. Is that something that you feel like so strong that this is something that drives parents into your school, or something that you feel you can showcase the school without having to worry so much about that at the moment?
See, then it comes back to communication. What you have to realize, how do people perceive stuff? Why when we go to restaurants, what do? We check out Yelp, we check out reviews. So I think it's so important that as you're in the process, it doesn't mean you have to be accredited and start the school. No, you start the school, you start a restaurant, you go through the ups and downs. You start the school, you go ups and downs, you're tweaking, but then you want to start bringing in, for the people who are bought into it, wait a minute, are we sure this is the right thing? Guess what? We have accreditation to prove that. And then every few years, it's a great checks and balance. It's a great checks and balance, because we do it all. That's why even when we do like checks and balance with the teachers, with the students, after the first quarter, and because my thing is like, if we're just having us evaluate them, the teachers have to get to evaluate us too. So in the middle of the year, they get to evaluate the principals too and say, what's your thoughts? Where do you think the strengths are? Where do you think the weaknesses are as an administration? And not wait the end of the year and say, you know what, you really didn't help us out. So I look at it, you do what you do and keep doing it. But at the same time, the goal should be that you should get accreditation. I think it helps change the game perception, and also tweaks on areas that you have. And it helps. We got tweaked about, alhamdulillah, we did our accreditation like 17, 18 years, maybe, but every 3-4 years. And we got dinged on one area on technology. But that was awesome, because now the board was like, you know what, we're going to put more money into it. So sometimes it helps us allocate the money that we want, right? Because like, look, hey, we got dinged, right? And then that becomes like, ooh, we had above, ding, right there. I'm like, well, you know what? We kind of told you, like, hey, let's allocate money to make sure our technology program comes up to par. Now we have like iPads for every kid. And then we have like our whole computer technology program, so I think those kind of things. So there's also wins. It helps you as administrator too.
I know that when I go in to do accreditation visits, I'll always ask the principal, what can we help you get? What do you want? For that very reason.
That's true. I know I went over and I didn't get to the other one. Communication itself is it's huge, right? And so that's why I just thought, let me just kind of give you a little bit more on this aspect of it. But yes.
We have 1 more hour.
Oh, it's a 2-hour program.
It's a 2-hour program. I mentioned that to you when we started. Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Then I have the other one. Okay, good. Okay, I'm prepared. I don't know why.
Also, Brother Abdul Wahab is asking if you would be able to share your slides. I know that you've edited, it's a long presentation that you have, but you cut it down.
Yeah,
where are you on that?
Some of this stuff I can't, because some of this is from my university information, and it's intellectual property of some of my
Understood. Okay.
The full-time professors at the university.
So to everybody, use your phones and take some screenshots.
Yeah. I apologize. You could take a screenshot. I can't have that, right? But other aspects of it, like I had this. I mean, this is a whole 3-hour, 2-day thing. I was in Qatar with the university. So, but okay, good. That's so funny. For some reason, I don't know why I was kind of rushing. Oh, this is awesome. Sorry. All right, awesome. Okay, so we still have the other aspect of it. So okay, so in the communication, so let's any other these are the 10 essential skill sets, but any other questions on that, right? So we had kind of stopped at listening and kind of showing you how listening is asking the right questions.
Can I
stop you
here?
Yes, sir.
And this question related to brother, I think, Sister Asma and Virginia. It's just the opposite. We have the opposite case. And for Wayne, we start with K to 5. Now we have K to 9. How to proceed to 12th grade? What do you think? What qualification we need to meet as a school to continue? When it comes to the student, we have more than what we need. Like we stop taking students because a lot of the demand is high for the Islamic school, and we are the only Islamic school in the city. Like we stop taking, we get like the maximum is 30 students in each classroom. So the students a lot, but how should we grow? To add 1 grade a year, or to wait until we achieve some goals? How did you do your 17 years you said you waited for too long to be able to add high school. So what do you advise?
So here's my thing was that, sometimes we just do a high school and we're doing a high school. And my big thing was, I rather use that funds. So just to kind of give you an idea, I knew that I could have 3 sections of each, 2 to 3 sections of each elementary. And I said, look, I can make more impact K to 8 with a lot more kids, and then because now I have to give it up for the high school. There's so many other kids who can't come. So when we had that first campus of 280, we got a second campus. We had a 250 kid waiting list. So now, alhamdulillah, we're at 750. So my whole thought process is that, and I'd rather pay the teachers a lot more than trying to find a high school teacher who can't find all of them too. So my thing was, how do we help up our salary? So every 5 years, we increase our salary like a 6%, right? We have a whole salary scale. Then we said, let's give them performance bonuses. Then we have after school activities. We run more than 40 after school activities, archery club, this and that. So I'd rather fund that, because now I'll get the whole community to buy in and they could participate in. So sometimes, because when we do a high school, it's like, oh yeah, there's there. But I'm like, well, is there more still kids in preschool, pre-K, kindergarten, elementary who can't get into your school? And why not take that? Because that's proper. In my mind, you could change the whole concept of a child's mentality in the lower grades. If a kid comes in as a high school, it's sometimes the biggest headache, because they're now coming with their own feelings, and now you're trying to change but with social media, they could give you more headaches, and they can post anything they want about the school. So I'm a big believer in the lower grades is to really, if you could do things right and provide high school programs for the kids. And because sometimes we take so much loss there for that high school, where we could use that money to increase our salaries for the teachers. We always complain about it. Then I'm like, then let's start thinking. I'll say, no, I'm gonna say, why are you gonna have it? Why are you gonna start a high school board member when we can't pay that? Save that money and start paying this, have that. We're gonna make it. We made a policy every 5 years. We have a 2% increase every year, but every 5 years it has to be 6%, right? Because of COVID, we're doing a 10% next year.
So
I believe it that way.
Yeah,
right.
Financially, it's not an issue. When it comes to finance, we have a good members. They are business people, and whenever we need money, they put a lot of money into the school. So, like,
but space-wise, do you still have more elementary kids who could come into the school? If you give that high school rooms up, would you still have enough to take other kids, or that's going to be a waiting list? If the waiting list, I realize in preschool, kindergarten, fifth grade, it's 20, 30 kids. In high school, I don't have really a waiting list. I'd rather have started a third section. So what we've done is we went from 1 section to 2 sections to 3 sections in every grade, up to like second, third grade.
The space is not a problem either. We have 3.
Then you just say Bismillah and do it then, right? And if all those are kind of there, now you got to look at, but you can, and if it opens up, and financially it's not a big issue, then you start off with 2, 3. But then the thing that has to happen is, do you have the teacher for it, right? What we have is that in the high school, because it's by subject, specialty, preferred, that becomes the issue for us. Well, the way we've done is we got our 6th grade teachers, and most of them are all certified like 7 to 12. They teach up to 12th grade, right? So we have that because we couldn't just have, first, we can't find teachers now. It's hard to find teachers who are in that film, especially like math and science. So I think if you could have that and you could pay the teacher right, then you say Bismillah and you go. And it's still, and you start off 4 or 5 and let it develop.
Yeah, but my question is still here. I don't think we get the answer that I need, I think.
Okay.
What is the areas that I want to make sure before I proceed, I already accomplished? What areas do you think I need to focus on to open? For example, the board is saying, Abdullah, you sure you are ready for 10th grade next year? I said, I'm working on it. But I'm working on to make sure I have enough teachers, certified teachers. The space I do already have it. So what other things, in your opinion, that I need to make sure I have it before I open 10th grade?
I mean, if you got building, you got teacher, you got curriculum,
Can I jump in?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think one of the biggest issues, so our school, this is our 4th year in operation, but it is the 7th year since the inception of the idea. And the first thing was the vision, like, why do I need the high school? Is it just so I can graduate students? That definitely is not a motivation for me, or even for other staff members, because like, Brother Habeeb is saying is like, well, if I can get more students in the elementary, then what's the problem? We're generating more money, people are happy, and then they can go off to these other schools in the area. Our vision and that the drive for opening up the upper grades was what we saw in the youth of our area. And I'm sure in every other area, it's the same thing, but this is a very affluent community, and there's a lot of, the youth, they come to the masjid, and parents, they come to the imam or whatever. It's like, oh, my kid is into this, my kid is into that. And then you see that the big influence is the 7 hours they're spending, in the schools, and these schools have all sorts of, ideas, and even if it's a clean and, non-gang infested neighborhood, it still has all the other things that come with public school, especially at the higher grades. So English literature, and what are they reading, and what are the ideas that they're being, so the drive was, I want to have a school where these youth can be taught by like-minded individuals who can teach them how to push back, how to be better Muslims, what is the Islamic identity. We have a lot of youth that we're losing to, and this is across America, to all other kinds of ideas. There's a lot of data-driven, research about atheism in the Muslim community, right? Why are we losing our students to atheism? And this doesn't come from elementary. Yes, elementary, absolutely. You need to start there. And it's so much easier when I get someone from another Islamic school. Those are the easy students. Those are the ones that you're kind of motivating to be better people, and you're pushing them academically. But the hardest, ones are the ones that are coming in 10th grade or 11th grade from all the baggage that they've had all these years in public school. And those are my biggest concern, but they're also my biggest challenge and pride. So you really have to look at it. Is it just because we want to graduate students? That's not really a big motivation, but you have to convince yourself and everyone around you that the youth are being lost to other ideologies, to other identities, to other issues. And this is what we're going to concentrate on, plus the academic excellence. And then the other thing is, have someone who's dedicated as a secondary, someone who's actually studied this, right? If you're an elementary leader, right? And there is a difference, right? There's a difference between someone who knows the secondary realm and then someone who knows the elementary. So to me, I needed people who knew secondary. There's a lot of people who knew elementary. That didn't really, work for me. I needed someone who had been in the classroom, knows youth, understands teenagers, psychology, and all that good stuff. So find a team that can help you with that, and then start putting things in order, right? Curriculum, how are you going to rate it? For us, we went to ed reports. We're like, how are these curricula, rated? I'm not just going to take what public school is asking me to do. I'm going to take what's approved by the state and then some, right? So we went to like everything that's honors, everything that's really rigorous, and we don't even label it as honors. We don't label it as AP. It is what it is. This is my rigorous curriculum that I expect my students to pay off to. So it needs a lot of like a feasibility study, but also, a team that understands what you're looking for. And it can't just be, okay, so we can graduate students. So I hope that helps a little.
Thank you very much. That was good.
Alhamdulillah. I think, and that's Jazakallah khair. You have to. Everyone's going to have to. Your why. Why are you going to do this, and what's the importance of it? And I think and that's why your school district plays a big part, or your area, and where do you see it? And I think it's there. Even for us, I mean, we took 15, 16 years, but what we did is even when our kids graduated, we built that relationship with all our kids' feeder schools that they're going to go to. But then when we felt that we were ready for it, and because space-wise, then we said, okay, this is what we're going to do. But we said, what's going to make it unique? So we had to do a dual credit program, right? Just to kind of bring it up, but at the same time, providing all the religious things. And then you have various kids. We have kids from all over. So I think that's very important. The idea of really looking at why, what's the purpose of it, and then inshallah ta'ala put barakah in it. But planning is huge. I think we just have to kind of plan why. And I get worried sometimes when the board's like, hey, we just got to do this. Okay, but as we're doing this, which is going to be good, there's always barakah. When you're doing things for the sake of Allah, Allah's going to open up doors like it's no tomorrow. I could give you stories after stories how, I've always people ask, once you ever thought about going to public school, it's Allah's only opened up more doors for me just being in the realm. And I think it was only better for my own life, even as a person, as a dean, just being around kids and the environment that I prefer. Right. So which I think was good for not this world, inshallah, also for the hereafter. So keeping those things going. Is there any other questions, thoughts, comments? Feel free to add in as we go into this. I want to go into building stakeholders in a few minutes with especially the businesses. So I just want to kind of give you that. The other one I just wanted to look at, if you didn't see, is 10 communication secrets of great leaders. They know their audience, right? And that's why it's so important. Like knowing your audience at every group, from your parents. That's why when there's a situation, like right now, I had got a call from someone about 2 days ago. So before I even call them back, I forgot the 5th grade teacher and say, hey, the principal was like, hey, anything happened with this person or this person? Or I asked the teacher just to give me some background. Then you're like, oh, okay. This is what's going on. Let's try to find out. We had I had got a call one time. Someone said, hey, we have a girl that she was saying that, I don't like my house. I'm thinking of just, maybe I want to go live with my grandmother, right? So the teacher brought it up. I said, oh, who's that person? Oh, I know the background. The husband and wife been having issues for 10, 12 years, or we're trying to work things out. That plays a big part, right? Expert, in body language, right? Just that morning, there's that idea of when you're talking to people every day, if you're in the hallway and you're passing by, I've seen this a lot. Sometimes I've gone to visit principals, and back home, I know the authority of principal was like the fear, right? I remember just when I'm like, hey, Assalamualaikum, how you doing? Good. Hey, high five to kids. I remember a parent brought up to me and said, Brother Quadri, look, when we went back home, when we saw the principal, we looked down like this. Right? We had so much respect for them that we were just not even look at them. And we would never even want to see the principal. And it kind of funny. I said, well, you know what? That respect is out of fear. I don't want them to respect me out of fear. Right? Do you think when the Prophet walked by, did they all be like, oh my God, let me look down, I'm scared? They all want to be by him. Right? They want to have that. So the idea, it's so important that body language, the way we have that it's open, that people can be open. Because if they are fear of you, they're not really going to tell you what you want to hear, right? They're only going to say stuff that's going to make sure that they're in your good graces. But if you have an open kind of thing, like, hey guys, how's it going? Everything good? Everything is going well? That's why just passing by, And even when they realized that they had this idea of Nordstrom. I don't know if you guys have Nordstrom in your area, right? Nordstrom is it's a store, it's kind of more of a high-end store. And they've researched why it's a very popular store, and its jobs, when they talk about job satisfaction, people enjoy working there, and they call it the Nordstrom way. And I thought to myself, like, what? How can this be? What is it? So I went one time. Most stuff don't fit me in like regular stores, but they're like, "How are you? Nice to meet you." They even have a business card for the person who works there, and say, "If you need anything, have that." And then they have a return policy. Anything you buy, if you don't like it, you return it, no questions asked. So they realize that when you have, and they have this thing, the customer is always right. I always don't think, but that thought process changes the body language and people, that even if something's more expensive, they prefer still to buy there, because that whole ambience and that feeling and that specialty and have that, it changes the mindset for people. And so when you have that at the morning, hey, assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum salam, and the kids are saying salam, are you staff? Sometimes staff. I'm like, hey guys, if in morning at du'as, if you're looking around on your phone, drinking your coffee, not saying the dua, what do you think the kids are going to think? If you yourself are like, so that's why morning dua, it's very important that as administrators, we need to be there too. You can't be like, you guys do dua. You need to be there reciting with them, even if that means for a few minutes and walk away. But then they have kids realize that you think it's important. That's going to change the game. Right now, we're doing morning assembly through the mics. What I'm just doing is walking around every class and reciting and kind of popping in, kids seeing like, hey, we're seeing, hey, teachers, are you reciting? Are you like, okay? I'm like, those duas are not just for the kids. That's for all of us. Allah doesn't say after age 25 you don't need these. So having that body language is also so important, right? And kind of having that conversation, being authentic. They speak with authority. Sometimes when authority doesn't mean you have to be like, the hammer down. But hey, certain times we need to make sure that we are confident in what we're trying to say. Sometimes you could go back on a decision that you made, but and no problem. And you could say, it's my fault. I was wrong. I'm sorry. That happens, right? And I think that have that. And then when they do speak to you, they have ears, right? Good leaders are always listening to what's going on. When you're outside at lunch, recess, except just watching to make sure no one's doing wrong. Even if you're walking, like, hey, how's it going, young man? You doing well? How's that going? Oh, Mr. Q, we need some more basketballs out there, because look at those, like only a few kids play. Hey, coach, we need to bring out a few more equipment. It's like the older kids are taking over that, having those kind of things and saying, yeah, they thought about that. They remember that. Then just looking at, okay, who's doing wrong is also a great time to learn. So what are we doing? What can we do better? Hey, we want to bring back our snacks. Can we bring back hot lunches, Mr. Quadri? We're getting tired. Parents like, now they appreciate the hot lunches that we provided. So those are things that you kind of go ahead and get there. So now talking about like hot lunches and stuff, the other big aspect is that when you communicate with yours is that if you want to have a buy-in to the community, to everyone else, to say this is important to school, is to build relationships with our local businesses, right? And ideas, and say, what can we do? So there's a few things I want you guys to kind of think about. And the reason I'm bringing this up, I wanted to kind of show you a slide. Sorry, there's about like 120 here. So I'm just trying to go to, I have this whole thing about partnership schools too. So we're gonna kind of, okay, yeah, let's go here. Okay, that's funny. For some reason, I don't know why I was thinking, that's hilarious. Let me show you the slide. I want to show, and all right, so University of Chicago, can you guys see this? You guys see that? Okay. It talks about organization future of schools that interact to advance school achievement, relationship, trust across the school community, right? So it talks about, they did about 200 schools. They visited 210 schools and looked at, what makes, schools, for school improvement, right? So the University of Chicago had this consortium, and they did research, and they said, hey, what gets individuals or what gets them on LinkedIn, right? So, and this was at the National Community and School Reform Conference at Harvard University. And so in this, they kind of talked about, it's just, okay, classroom is the key, right? We're doing this for the kids. Is learning happening, right? But they said there are 5 components that help make sure, how do you turn around schools, right? So one becomes instructional guidance, right? This is a classroom. The second thing becomes professional capacity. The idea of learning. Excuse me, I don't know why it says professions, but right. Number 3 is parent community ties, right? That relationship with the community and parents plays a big part, right? Number 4, student-centered learning climate, right? So, I'm not going to take too much about it, but just thought you should have. Number 5, as the person, is the one who that's outside, as the driver, you're the leadership that drives this. You got to make sure all these connections happen. Now, so making sure instructional is happening, making sure they're getting their PDs and the resources that they need, making sure that, hey, a lot of it's focused on students, but that parent community ties is very important. And this is where we want to look at and saying, what are we doing with individuals that kind of plays a big part, right? When we look at, I'm trying to pull one thing up for you guys, is when you have like the idea of community, we sometimes think like, all right, well, one is, how do we communicate to the community that we're doing some amazing things? How do we also, when we do fundraising, what we've realized is that we always do fundraising and we talk to our community and businesses when we want something. When we what? When do we mostly talk to them? When we want something, right? So I want you guys to think to yourself right now, what is something that you might have done where you asked the community or even our donors that you've done something for them, which they haven't done for you? Separating from educating their kids. So what do you guys think about it? As your school, is there anything that you guys have done?
I think for us, we did, we started this idea of like advertising for small businesses and actually working with small businesses that are owned by other Muslims in the community that are either startups or small, kind of like us, because we have that, in common. And I think they were kind of surprised when, we didn't ask them for donations. What we did was like a night at their place or like a restaurant night or something like that. And then, we got whatever percentage is normal, right? So they gave us like 10% of the thing, but we advertised for them for like 3-4 weeks. And then every time since, so this has been 3 years now, every time since, we're like, oh yeah, our first fundraiser that we did at this particular place. So they felt like we were not asking. So they would come and just give us like, here's $1,000, here's, $1,500, whatever it is that they would give without us asking as a result. So that's something that we felt like that was good. But I think also another board member mentioned to actually reach out to big donors. We call them deep pocket donors, and show them, we just sort of moved into this beautiful place, and they're like, show them the place, just kind of take them on a tour, have a luncheon, have just like come and have a cup of coffee with everyone. So we're planning on doing that. With COVID, it's a little bit difficult because our area is pretty hot right now, but in general, these are some ideas that we wanted to implement this year with our new place.
Okay. Anyone else?
We kind of did the same thing. I mean, we do advertise for other businesses and also ask them to bring lunch one time for the student. Of course, they're getting paid for it, but at the same time, we're advertising and letting the parents know that we're using this vendor. So that's what also I can think of, other than also running like a summer camp and trying to serve all community, not just our school.
Nice. So any thoughts before I just went? So what I think, so these are solid, and this is what I want you guys to think about. If you can, so let's we take a business and say, if you do a school night every month, we do one every month. So we're doing about 9 to 10 each, and we pick different restaurants. Now it becomes like people want to, because they realize when we advertise, this is where you got to communicate and remind them. We have 3,500 people on Facebook, 1,000 on Instagram, 2,500 on our email. So even with some parent who left our school, or maybe they graduated from our school, we still keep them on our like social media places, right? And what that does is that it shows them, look, hey, when you're advertised, we're advertising for you. So we get 20% from all sales, 15% on that school night. So that way they're coming, they're marketing and say, look, at whatever sales, we trust you, you're going to tell us, and then 20% of that sales come from us. So now we try to do all the Muslim places, but even now you got non-Muslims. We had McDonald's. And then I was standing like, hey, in the drive-through, like, hey, welcome to McDonald's. When I take your order, please. Loved it, right? They gave us all sales from 4 o'clock until 8 o'clock, any sales, right? Now then we had some issues because sometimes we're like, hey, can you separate the ones that maybe the BLT sandwiches or whatever, there was here and there. We had some parents that had some concerns here and there. We're like, okay, when you do non-Muslim restaurants, it becomes sometimes a little tricky. It depends on the community and their views on Zabiha halal kind of prospect thoughts. But so that becomes kind of a conversation, right? So those you'll see. So one aspect is as a restaurant, so it's a win-win. Second thing is when you have, that's why one of the big things is having your Facebook or website very active. They would advertise there. We have individuals, so we generate just from advertising $30,000-$40,000 a year, right? Because we are doing school nights, cost $500 to $600, so that's about $10,000 right there. Like 500 to 1,000. Then we might have sometimes a banner or marketing space on our website. So when we send a newsletter, on the bottom there's always 1 or 2 companies. So it could be from Oman and mutual funds. It could be some from there. So that kind of generates another thing. So that kind of gives you another aspect of it. That's number 2. Number 3, one of the things that I wanted you guys to realize also why this is very important is that if you could look at and saying, all right, if pre-COVID, if your gym or something's very well used, what we do is we rent out our gym to the whole community. So you might have, as you're diverse, but sometimes the Bosnian community wants to have their own small thing. We're like, hey, you can have the gym, $45 an hour. We generate another 15, 20,000 just renting our gym 7 days a week after 6 to 8, from after 5:36 after our school programs, we rent out the gym on both campuses. And so we have women things. So I have that. I've said now there's 1 or 2 Saturdays blocked off for youth groups, like youth work, but every other day we rent it out. And now what we say is look, we have more than 1,000 people, 800 people who come out, when they have their groups of it. We used to have banners up, right? And say, would you like your banner up? And you get to see these many people. We have a morning assembly, 700 kids or 500 kids are sitting in there. Or we have our parent program. Would you like to go ahead and sponsor that? That becomes a thing. Having individuals who become donors, one day just surprise someone who's given a lot and say, look, we're making this room under your plaque. Except saying, if you'd like to, if you give this much, we'll give you put a plaque on there. Sometimes realize some people who just go above and beyond that you give them, right? Or do you have a Ramadan iftar just for your donors? It's a question. Do we make sure that you giving out every month to 2 months, giving an update about even to your sponsors, donors about what you guys have accomplished? Do we give out on Hajj? Do you give a gift? Not just when there's donation time, but before 4 months, 6 months before school donation, giving out something to them, having that. We have certain events that we have sometimes a community member have tickets to games. We'll sometimes might have that. Right now, we did a golf outing. We do a golf outing every year for the last 5 years. We have 90 to 100 people golf. It generates us 13, 14,000. And you get people who are not part of the school, but they get to hear about our school, right? That becomes a thing. We did a baseball game, and we did all the summer schools with the White Sox, and we brought all the kids there, and a percentage of the tickets go back to your school. We're doing a Bulls night at the NBA, right? We sell tickets. People don't mind. It's a family event. Don't mind spending $30, but $10 of that comes back to us. It's a win-win situation, right? It's a family event. It's going there. When we do a rollerblading night, ice skating night, these are all community events where you're coming, and then on that thing, you have certain groups that can have tables and they can share their information out. Sometimes you have a group that we are very supportive. We'll say, hey, you know what? We'll market you and give you some information to think about. So those are kind of things that I want us to really look into, is how and what we can do to make them also a win-win situation, right? Stephen Covey has this, right? It's a win-win. You benefit, I benefit, right? And I is really our school, right? And that's where you want to go ahead and kind of look at certain things that to think about when we have these specific things, right? So if you have a gym for rental, if you have programming, and the programming I want you guys to think about is after school programs. After school programs don't all have to be free. We have an archery club. That individual is not from our community. He does it at the park district. Why don't you do it at our school? We'll charge you this much, just like a park district gives you money. We want you to do it here. You get a profit, we get a profit. Hey, you want to have a chess club? Why don't you do it at our school? There could be a chess team separate. You can have a club. We have karate. Well, you could do why don't you have your upset the dojo, save you some money. Do it here. There's a price. We get $10 for each kid. You get that. It's a win-win situation, and it's open to the whole community.
You're charging the parents then for their child to participate in archery club and karate club and so on?
Yes, because they're all going to go do that anywhere else. They're unique things, right? Now, we're not going to do that for student council. You're not going to do that for regular school things. We have even like a Beyblade club. We used to have it. Okay, pre-COVID. Beyblade clubs are playing. They're fun, right? But we had a Beyblade tournament, $1 to jump in. We had about 100 kids, $100 just like that. I mean, use that money just to get the gifts. Right. And we do like small group fun things. We do airplane competition, right? And first grade against first grade and second grade. Then all the winners are first graders. The winner gets the second grade. Then we have the morning assembly, like an assembly. Everyone's on the corner and they're throwing from our stage. Who has the farthest? So it gets first against fifth graders, right? The top ones win. Because stuff like Beyblade, we do rock, paper, scissors competition. Like there's so many different, that's a separate whole school culture to think about. But this idea of getting people involved and having that goes a long way.
Building community. Do you have parenting seminars or anything like that? And if so, are there associated fees?
Yeah. So that parent seminars, we have them free. Like we just had our other one on anxiety just 2 weeks ago. So we were just doing them we used to do them live, then we realized that through Zoom, we're getting a lot more people. And then what we have is we have a family game night. Right. So we have a family game night. You might even see on one of our, if you go on our school website, you might see one of our YouTube thing. You'll see how we play it. So we have game night, whatever the theme is, have a talk. We're hyping it up. We'll ask questions or dress up. So that's another thing that's kind of bought in from the school.
These are all building community. And you are charging for these also, or they're for free?
But
they're paid for by sponsors or something. How does it work in your school?
Which one? The game night?
The game night, the parenting seminars.
The parent seminars we have. So we have a deal with, we have a counseling group called Khalil Center, which we pay. So that they have a certain amount they have to do. Then what we do is some of the after school activity programs. So we set aside some money for stipends. We might give a stipend of if it's like $100, $150. We don't give major stipends to speakers, but we try to do something so at least when they give their time. And that helps, kind of this get people there. So I think that, and then we have, you can allocate some of your professional development when we have it for counseling, wellness, we could say that education not just for kids, but also for the parents in general, which kind of focus on kids kind of topics, right? Especially if you have certain areas where you're social emotional, you can use that in various ways. So we were trying to focus on that and say, well, yeah, we're going to educate kids when we're having training or we're having our counselors do that, but how do we do a class for them? And then what happens is when you become something like a popper topic, some of those companies can do a 2-minute advertisement before the program begins or at the end or in the middle. You don't want to do it at the end because people leave. So you want to do it right in the, after you do the introduction, say, hey, before we go, so-and-so is going to do a small, quick plug. This is brought to you by so-and-so. Now for them, $100 is not big because it takes care of it's not like, oh my God, we're asking for 1,000. Like, hey, you're just going to take care of the speaker's cost. Oh, I love it. That's a great idea.
These are wonderful ideas. I think that's just paid for everybody's tuition, even all of these wonderful, fruitful ideas. I'd encourage, our other attendees, please think about, brainstorm, what is your most difficult or challenging communication or community building conundrum that perhaps this is your last chance to check in with Brother Habeeb to see if he's got any great ideas to help you.
Yeah. Sorry.
So,
I realized I needed water, so I totally get it.
So we have an idea that we wanted to see if it's going to be implementable. So sustainability is a really big issue for Islamic schools. And I've been studying this, for our own project for quite some time now. And I realized that the schools in our area, the elementary schools that go, they're actually elementary and they go up to 8th grade, both have been established, let's say, I think 25 to 30 years ago. They're still paying rent. They're still, doing the traditional, fundraising events, all what you mentioned, right? They probably have a lot more programs than, any startup would have, but it's the same programs for 30 years. And so one of the ideas that our board is really concerned about is self-sustainability. And we were thinking of, we are a nonprofit school, but what we were thinking of is trying to figure out, since we're a middle school, high school, what other programs are offered in the district or, even privately, that we can bring into our place. So we don't have a gym, but we do have like a multi-purpose hall, and we have beautiful classrooms. So we were thinking of franchising from like these learning centers, right? There's like Huntington Learning Center or like SAT prep or tutoring programs. And I was wondering if you had any background about that. Have you done that? Have you thought of doing something like that? Other schools in your area have done that successfully? Or is that kind of like just having to take care of another, sort of business, because it is a business and you have to grow it. But the idea is that business would feed 100% into our, into the school. So we're, self-sustaining. And then of course, we're trying also to buy the building in a couple of years, which is a big project. But in general, this was an idea that we had where it's kind of like an after school program for kids who need it, but it's a franchise. So people, recognize the name, and it's a business that feeds into, instead of continuously fundraising and asking people for donation.
So I look at two ways here. So one is, I think it really works out. Salam School in Milwaukee, they have a whole voucher system. So they bought this whole strip by their school, and they have like various stores there, and they get a percentage of it. It's almost like a waqf in some ways. The catch is when you do another educational things, and you could say, hey, we have tutoring, and we have like our seniors do tutoring for our kids, our elementary, and there's a small charge, and that goes through for their high school senior programs. But so that's not a problem. Now, what happens is if you have something, one thing someone could say is like, oh, the reason I have Kumon is because I think middle school, high school might work out, because if you're doing something like Huntington and Kumon, it might work and it'll be great because it's a support for there. Now, if we were at elementary school, some say, well, see, that's how weak they are. They have to, now they even have this program here just to generate so the kids could do well enough, right? They, sometimes you always got that uphill battle. They're teaching so much that you have to still get tutoring just so you could, keep up with the academics. And now they're making money on both sides. Some people might say that. So you just got to think like, okay, how would people perceive this? But if you're a 6 to 12, and most times people go to Huntington and others when they're in lower grades, you say, hey, look, we're just trying to help out another service, a group of people that we don't have support for, and you're generating money. I think it's a great idea, right? I think there's always going to be naysayers on both sides, but I think, if you manage it, but that's what's going to have to happen is that you have to allocate. So as a principal, yes, we had the full-time school. We have a Darloom over 200 kids. We do 20, 30 throughout the year after school programs, right? We have a Saturday special needs school. Now we started an online school. We have a Hifid school. But that was something I had. But when the new principal came, I said, look, she can't do that. She's going to have to manage that. That's something I just did because I was part of the community, right? And so they're like, okay, we'll just make you superintendent, kind of managing all that. But what that does is I'm looking at the bigger picture, because I have to say, how do we how do we diversify our revenue streams in various ways? So that's why managing the rentals of all those, I was like, hey, let's have that. We'll manage these. So you have to think that way for sustainability. It's not even like I would just say it's a great idea. Now you just got to see how is that perceived with the people. I would only think is if it's an educational thing like Huntington, and if you are now 30-40% of your kids are going there, like, well, see, that's how, they don't have it, it's not strong enough, and that's why they have to go here. Is the only thing I can see that could become another problem. Managing people and stuff, it's just like anything else. It's like running a program, which is there as long as there's no liability issue. It's there. Like we once did a business with someone and we realized that wasn't a great one. We did a co-sponsor with mechanics, right? And we get 20% if something worked there, but then something doesn't go well. People say, oh, that per mechanic wasn't well. We're like, forget about like dealing with that, because it became a headache. Where so I was like, well, that work wasn't there. And you told us. I was like, oh man, let's stick with basics, things like food. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. But everyone knows it's your choice. Mechanic and stuff where those things cost like $500-600. So the profit margins were higher. We realized was also somewhat problematic. right? So you live and learn, right? You got to look at it. I thought I was like, oh man, this is awesome. We could get, from this specific place. Then I thought if you could get like a basic like Jiffy Lube, where it's just oil change, sometimes not too much long. That's something that we could try to figure out, try to work with, which is something I'm trying to do this year. Like, okay, maybe independent mechanics could be problems because everyone's never happy with the plumber or the electrician. So I was like, hey, you could just advertise, we'll advertise you, but we won't take a percentage because that way parents know it's their decision.
Thank you.
So, Assalamu alaikum.
Sam.
So all these are great ideas, and I have so many of them in my head as well. But the thing is, I have a big question. Who do you hire someone in the marketing field to look after all of these programs? Because like for us, it's a small school. I'm the principal doing most of the work in every aspect, in everywhere. And then I have 10 staff, and they're all teachers. I have an admin that I'm trying to train. So where do we get the time to do all of that? Or how would we start doing that? Do we hire someone and school budget doesn't allow? How do you do that?
Yeah, so I would say, and sometimes you might not need school budget, because suppose you have like, let's take something like school night. School night is 2 phone calls. Honestly, 2 phone calls. You already go, everyone mostly goes to that restaurant anyway and say, hey guys, we just want to do a school night. Now the question becomes, who makes your flyers for your regular school? That's that, office manager. Like I didn't get a VP until my 10th year, right? I think it was at 450 kids. I was like, look, I need a VP, right? What we realized is that it's all about communicating and writing and ask questions. Because if I like right now, I went to PTA. So what we've also done, which is when I go, we made a school card. Every Muslim meat store or restaurant here, we get 15% off. Membership has its privileges, right? We've kind of had that. So like I go to them anyway. I'm like, hey, we're gonna do this. And also for our teachers, you guys give a discount, like, for them being part of it. But one of the things that we have to do is that I think it just takes, like, I gave you a bunch of things. Can all of them be done at one time and say, okay, we have a gym. There must be someone from the masjid who's the manager of the building or your custodian, and say, hey, custodian, you're already there. We're going to give you an extra, like we're going to generate $40 rentals. We're going to give you an extra $5, per hour. Keep an eye when you're cleaning, just that person's there. These are all adults, right? We rent to adults, not young kids, right? They have to be an adult there. So 1 or 2 are easy wins, right? You could do a school night with maybe maximum 30 minutes of your conversation, right? Because even school night, they're going to manage it. You don't even have to be there. You just have to be there for a few seconds. You can tell teachers to go at a certain time because they're managing everything. We're just trusting them. They're going to tell us how many sales they had and give us there. Allah knows. And most people will be honest because they know it's a win-win. So I'm trying to think of like, you could set, knowing that because of where you are at your school, figure out which ones are easy wins. After school club, you could tell teachers, hey, can you do the after school clubs, right? Are you able to? Like what we do is we use our seniors and our graduates. A lot of our after school clubs are run by our kids, graduates. Our special needs program, we have about 35 special need kids. So we have 2 people who are paid. All the other ones are volunteered. MashaAllah, because 2 volunteers for every kid, because these are Down syndrome. 50% of them are alumni kids from ours, our community youth group kids, right? People who are from our community. So well, I realized that you can look at certain things that kids could do that could help out. Or some parents who want to, how parents want to be involved, and you might be like, this is something you could be like, hey, would you like us to help out to do that? Our golf outing is a parent who likes golf. Say, why don't you set this up for us? And it was a win-win. So that's where I feel like talking to our parents and figure out when they want to get involved and say, hey, can you do this? So except just that, I have this one thing on Beyond the Bake, so I think Mrs. Susan. It's not, we got to think outside just the Beyond the Bake Sale, right? And say, hey, you got some skills. What can you do for, all right, you can make this. Some people are like, and your parents ask, is anyone great with flyers? Maybe because you don't have an admin, and say, can you make flyers for us? That'll be a volunteer out, right? Some of these older kids in the youth groups, if you have a youth group in your community, they'll make some amazing flyers. All of them are like, I'm like, hey guys, you make the flyer for us. I'm like, oh, we got this, Mr. Q. Right? That's their way of giving too. So that's my whole thing is that communication is really finding out people's talents. Even asking teachers, like, anyone good at this? Okay, you know what? For all the flyers you made for this year, we're going to give you a stipend of $300. Some staff might even do it. You just have to give a small, thing and say, look, I'm saying hiring someone for $20,000. What we got to start thinking is, Can I get someone there and I give them at the end, they made 10 flowers and give a stipend of 100, 200. That's still cheaper than 30,000. Like, oh my God, it's a stipend. Yeah. But altogether, even if you had 10 flowers throughout the year at $100, $1,000 and spending on a whole office manager for $25,000, it's a better thing. Sometimes you got to communicate that to them like, I mean, that's a great idea. Yeah. You keep on doing this.
Two things come to mind, parent-teacher association. And the other thing is on your registration form, it's a good idea to have an area where you can find out what type of businesses or industries your parents are in so that you know who to tap for some specifics.
Yeah.
Jazakumullah khair. Thank you so much.
So I think, I mean, we're kind of in the same boat. What I did when I first started, because everyone was giving me all these ideas and I had already been visiting a lot of the big schools, and I want, I have my vision is much bigger than, the startup, and it seemed overwhelming for me. And yes, it's almost like a one-man show in the beginning. Now it's become two men, like it's me and my assistant, and that's it. And we're both still 100% volunteer, because our vision at the school is, you need to hire really good staff to be able to realize your vision. So one of the things that I would suggest is for you, to take down these ideas, but then prioritize what is actually easy to do and what is actually good to have and what is, like long-term, short-term vision, right? And then just kind of say, okay, this year we're just going to do 4, family nights or 3 family nights, and then just kind of every year add one more thing to it. It becomes a school culture in a way, and and you're still building up, because when you're a small school, you're not going to be able to do what a big school does, nor do you probably have, the interest, because small schools are like that. They almost feel like they're a tutoring center instead of an actual school. So their expectations are a little bit different. This year, we went from, so we started off with 3 students. When everyone asked me what did you do, so I started with 3 students. I actually had a full year of 3 students. They did shadowing opportunities in the district. They shadowed the lawyer in a murder case. It was amazing. They did some of the most wonderful things that I could do to showcase that this is my vision for, like, not just 3 students, for X amount. This year, alhamdulillah, even COVID, we didn't get hit very hard. We had more students than other, schools. We had a rise. And then alhamdulillah, this year we have about 57 students. It's not much, but it is, the growth is there, but the growth actually is within. Meaning that, yeah, it doesn't seem like we have a lot of students, but the programs have doubled or tripled over the years. So just make a list of these things. They're good to have. They're good to know that other schools are doing it. Don't feel overwhelmed that you have to do all this or else you're not a good school. Your school has its own culture and some things that the community appreciates, and just kind of like start building up to it. Like, we're just going to have this year, and then next year maybe there's many ideas that I can try and just build up to it. So don't feel like you have to do too much just to be able to say that we're competing with everyone else, or we're doing what everyone else is doing.
Jazakumullah khair.
Chip away.
Yeah, Sister Aisha, we haven't heard from you much. Any questions, challenges, takeaways? We are down to our last 12 minutes or so.
This has been very, very informative. I'm taking a lot of notes. We're doing a lot of the things that are being suggested. We were hit hard by COVID. Our enrollment is down, but it slowly picked up this year. And we have professional development coming up on the 22nd, and Brother Habeeb is going to be our guest presenter. We're very excited about that. So I'm taking a lot of notes, very important points that, just the simple fact about the dua, where teachers have to be really present because they are modeling that. And so this is, I keep telling the teachers, but this is definitely one thing starting Monday morning that, I'll mention to the teachers, but lots of good stuff. Jazakallah khairan.
Just really quick, I just wanted to get which school and which city everyone's at. Sister Asma, you said Sterling, Virginia?
Yes, I'm in Sterling, Virginia, and it's called Hidayah Academy. This is our 4th year.
Excellent, mashallah. Is that close to like Adams Center, or is that far from San Antonio?
It's actually in the backyard of Adams Center. Yes.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Same community. Yeah,
Oh,
same community.
Mashallah. And
Assalamu alaikum. I'm from Spring, Texas, Houston Peace Academy. It's a suburb of Houston.
oh, nice. The Houston piece.
Uh,
Abdul, brother, Bob?
my God, I have hard time to.
Oh, no, yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
For Indiana, but I have a question, Brother Habib. Mental health and cases that you may find in a school that didn't have a psychologist, would you seek help from?
Yeah. So if we don't have a school psychologist, and what we did in the starting was that we would try to look in the community and see if there's any parents who are we had some community members and see if we can subcontract them. If not, if it's something, like basic things we try to deal with, and if it's something more important, we said this is where, even if you provide a resource reference for them, that was huge. Or if you could work with your school local district, even school local district, when they still have to do all the testing for speech and like learning. Even if some school, like for Illinois, we lost a lot of funding, so they weren't able to provide the resources for learning disability, but they could still do the test, right? And find that. So they could, even if they didn't may do counseling, they could say, hey, we feel like this child might need some counseling. There's some social, emotional issues. So at least you could get them halfway and now providing the resources if we don't have that. So I think that's very important. So important to work with their school districts, right? So one of the things the business part, the aspect that I didn't get, I want to just kind of finish up this last is what is outside business, but the other stakeholders is our school district. You work with your school district, we can kind of have that. For example, even our library, we've built a relationship with the library where we have a salah room at the library, like for them. And we go and we have school nights. We do reading nights at the school library. So that way they get to see our kids. And like I might come and read a book over there and it's open to others. And they could come in and they have events where the librarian could come and share stuff. And every month we highlight all the stuff that's going on in a local library. Are building a relationship with the school districts where even, hey, I know that all of our Muslim kids don't go here, but is there anything we could do to help your kids, Muslim kids at your school that you might need our help? So that's why even when we didn't have a high school, we first thought like, let's at least build that relationship where alhamdulillah, we had Jummah prayers there, Eid al-Adha off there. We're trying to provide halal food there. We're trying to get Arabic. We're having a meeting with the principals and superintendents with all the parents. So having that relationship, because what we mostly do with the school district is when we want something. But if you were participating in some of their school cleanup or the village cleanup, and they start seeing us and being part of the Chamber of Commerce, is going to play a big game in finding resources within, and then funding where we're part. Like sometimes they have like the funding for arts program, and we apply to, and they gave us some funding. So you'll start seeing it takes time, but I think we have to build. And you might say, oh no, it's a community. This was a community when we first bought their building in 1989. They found out Muslims bought it. They had a referendum to buy it back. This was the Persian Gulf War, and they had a vote. 65% said no, the Muslims have it. This is the same community in 2002. Right after 9/11, we're expanding. They didn't let us expand, and they had said that due to space, which is Department of Justice had to step in. This is the same community when this happened. They had pigs with American flags backwards on their lawns when you come to the school. Then now we've built such a relationship. We have a commissioner on the police department, on the school trustee, the board trustee, the village board, and it's changed, right? But that means chipping away, talking to people, and you have people in your school community, parents who don't mind doing some of this stuff, right? It can't be you, but you are the facilitator and saying, I think we need to start building this. And maybe I'm a individual and we could kind of go ahead and do that, plays a big part. So that's the other aspect I want you to realize how important building those things are. So if that means if it's the 9 memorial, what we try to do is every year at 9/11 or something, we'll write a letter to say, thank you, police department, I think. And we keep on doing every, there. Or, hey, something really well happened, say, thank you, Mayor, for keeping us in mind and getting a commissioner, a Muslim commissioner. Our kids write letters to our, local officials when things good happen, not always writing when there's a complaint. And that changes the game, where we've had Senator Durbin come and visit our school. We've had Jan Schakowsky visit our school because we were always sending letters. So one time they themselves, we didn't say come to our school. We just wrote letters about thank you for supporting. Then that changes the concept. This year, as a state, we've changed the whole Muslim attire clothing, a Muslim contribution as part of state law. And so our kids are writing letters to those legislators who made that happen. And I want them to start realizing, so that's the other part of relationship, is not that only when we want something, but when things are going good, we're kind of going out there. Or if there's a community thing of non-violence or Black Lives Matter, we made sure our community, our kids went there, you know, the older kids for safety, write something on that so they could show that support that we're there. So that's the other group of associations of who are other influencers we would need to make sure that happens. It builds that ties. Is something I want you to have. So we adopt a park every week. We have parents go and pick up. We have a Lockwood Park is responsible for us every Sunday to clean. And every week we have a different parent member with their kids go and pick up. Our Skokie thing have one road that they have to kind of pick up, right? Those are kind of things that, you know, every week we have a thing called Shy Care, and some parents have an opportunity to go. I just wrote an article, you know, kind of forward to I think CISNA on serving God's creation, how important that is. So maybe Ms. Sue, I could forward it to you, and you could forward it to the CISNA
It
group.
would be my pleasure. I'm hearing a lot about Shy Care lately around here. Just so you all know, you know, we're both in Illinois, Habeeb and I, and this state has like the highest population, I think, or density of Muslims in the nation. And in some of our neighboring towns, we've got some very progressive Muslims who have made so many inroads with the local politicians and with many communities. It is truly changing lives and people's perceptions of the Muslims that are here. And it's not with a small amount of effort. It is long, consistent, but the cool thing is that it really is changing hearts and minds. So stay the course. It really does make the difference, just to be able to open up, and not always to be asking, as Brother Habeeb said, but offering yourselves as resources. You know, they may never use them, but if they just know that you've done that, I think that lends so much to making a favorable impression about our community. Brother Habeeb, thank you so much for everything that you have given to us. It's been mind-blowing and really exciting. Just, you know, you always radiate a lot of positivity, and I truly appreciate that. But you have given us some golden nuggets that I think the people who are wise enough to attend today are really going to be able to capture and take forward to improve their communities and their schools. So thank you kindly.
Inshallah, please keep us in du'as, and jazakallah khair, and Allah reward you guys. Hey, chip away. And I always tell you guys, even if it's not about numbers. Allah knows what you guys are doing. Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam never saw it, but we just make that dua, Rabbana taqabbal minna innaka anta samiul alim. So look at 50 years from now, whatever those number, all those people you have influenced, inshallah, in our bank accounts in the hereafter. So do your best, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of the rest. And Mrs. Labadi, I texted you the article.
Got it. Yes.
All right.
I will share that with everybody along with the replay, inshallah, within a couple of days. So thank you so kindly. Take care, everyone, until our next meeting. Inshallah, that'll be with Sister Uzma. And so we look forward to seeing you all then. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Allah ma'akum.